things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her?
Names like here we have the claim of Argentina.
Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rippin' Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Hello. Hello.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Darkwolf's Den.
The Darkwolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave, hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness. This is the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live worldwide from a secret mountain cave hidden high up in the beautifully snow-covered peaks of the Idaho mountains. That's right, we're ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, February 25th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to follow up the archaeology theme one more time with Antarctica. That's right, the frozen land down under. There's so many mysteries to Antarctica, and a couple we're going to debunk this evening, believe it or not. I cannot wait to get into this show. So much information, so little time, ladies and gentlemen. But before we do that, here is today's Today in History. On this day in 1836, a man named Samuel Colt patents his first multi-shot revolving cylinder revolver, enabling a firearm that could be fired multiple times without reloading. A man that truly changed the world with his work, and he did that on this day in 1836, and that is today's Today in History. And an amazing invention that is, one that we still use to this day. Of course, they've improved it over the years, thank goodness, but it's definitely something that has withstood the test of time. Speaking of withstanding the test of time, Antarctica has definitely withstood the test of time. It's, as long as I can ever remember, been a frozen wasteland, right? At least that's what we were told, a cold desert. However, it might not be as much a wasteland as one might think. And recently there was an article that came out about 5 days ago, as a matter of fact. And I just had to go look it back up. And before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and read some of this article. It's entitled, "Scientists Stumble Across Life That Shouldn't Be There 3,000 Feet Under Antarctica." A team of British scientists were surprised to find life thousands of feet beneath the ice of Antarctica in a sub-freezing environment where sunlight never reaches. The discovery happened during an exploratory mission at the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf when a team of geologists hit a rock instead of the ocean floor after drilling 3,000 feet of ice. "We were expecting to retrieve a sediment core from under the ice shelf, so it came as a bit of surprise when we hit the boulder and saw the video footage of animals living on it," said Dr. James Smith, a geologist at the British Antarctic Survey. The find was recorded with a GoPro camera. Quote, "This discovery is one of those fortunate accidents that pushes ideas in a different direction and shows us that the Antarctic marine life is incredibly special and amazingly adapted to a frozen world." End quote. Once again, this is Dr. Hugh Griffiths of the British Antarctic Survey. He told New Scientist, quote, "all sorts of reasons they shouldn't be there," end quote. And yet they find them there. So this is just one of the many insane miracles that are occurring down in Antarctica. And I use the word miracles very lightly because it's things we just don't understand, right? And then 3 days ago, there was another article that came out about a ghost particle that was found in the ice of Antarctica that can be traced back to a star that was shredded by a black hole a long time ago. So there's been a lot of news stories lately, is my point here, coming out about Antarctica, and we're only going to see those increase over the next couple of years. But ladies and gentlemen, with that said, that is tonight's topic, of course, is the many mysteries of Antarctica. And without further ado, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, Mr. Jason Martell.
So 99% of Antarctica is covered in ice. And in the middle here, this is the South Pole. This is called the Polar Plateau. That's over 2 miles thick with ice. And it even extends over to West Antarctica. And I'll show you at the end here what Antarctica looks like without the ice. And it's quite possibly two land masses that are connected by this ice bridge right around here. As I mentioned, there are parts that are heating up. We were up in this Palmer Peninsula area, this is a NASA scientific visualization studio that was created 3 years ago. And in the blue are areas where the ice is actually growing. And so somehow Mother Nature has this way of balancing itself out, that you have areas that are melting very rapidly, and I'll show you some signs and evidence of that of places that we visited here on the Palmer Peninsula. But then these other areas in blue, they're actually accumulating snow and ice. So somehow Mother Nature is able to equalize, and perhaps that's why we haven't seen any drastic sea level rises. Because remember the old saying, water seeks its own level. So if this polar plateau were to slip off of eastern Antarctica continent and drop into the ocean, it would be like a full glass of water, and you put a couple ice cubes in it, and then of course it would overflow. And that would be the same thing around the world, because of course all the oceans of the world are interconnected, and water would seek its own level everywhere, sparing no one. Even the Arctic Ocean would rise dramatically. And of course, all of our coastlines would be inundated, and it would be quite a disaster. But it hasn't happened yet, and this could be the reason why.
So our first point tonight is this whole climate change, global warming narrative that they keep trying to shove down our throats and tell us Antarctica's going to melt and we're all going to die and it's going to destroy the coastlands and yada, 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 yada. Well, Mother Nature doesn't work quite like that. Mother Nature's good about equalizing things. If one side's melting, the other side's just getting that much more ice. So a lot of what they tell you about this climate change stuff is absolute propaganda, especially when they try to invoke the poles like the Arctic or the Antarctic and tell you everything's going to die and we're all gonna be flooded over with ice water. Well, if that was going to happen, that should have happened a couple generations back, and yeah, we haven't seen that. The reason is, once again, the takeaway from this part, that Mother Nature equalizes what goes on. If one side melts, the other side grows.
In Antarctica, you have a lot of research stations. Now, this was all set up by the Antarctica Treaty, which was finally ratified in 1961. Yet many countries, 6 countries, make claims. Like here we have the claim of Argentina, which is, there's Ushuaia. That's the way we sailed in, did along the coast, and then sailed back Cape Horn, and then back into Ushuaia. These claims are not recognized, but they are still asserted by the 6 countries. And those 6 countries are Argentina, Chile, New Zealand, which makes sense because those are the closest inhabited land masses to Antarctica. But then you also have Norway, France, and Great Britain way up in Europe making claims to large chunks of Antarctica. But through the Antarctica Treaty, it has preserved the entire continent devoted to science and peaceful discovery or travel.
That's right. He said travel. Check this out, ladies and gentlemen. You always hear that we can't go to Antarctica. Well, that's not exactly true.
Such as I was doing. So one of the misconceptions is that you're not allowed to go to certain places. Well, keep in mind, I was only in this area, and this is where over 90% of all the boat traffic leaves from Ushuaia and only goes to here. So you have huge, huge areas that are basically unexplored or not traveled to frequently.
So you very much can travel to Antarctica. Now, Antarctica is actually a very large, very vast area and very cold area, so it's not like you can just go out on a morning hike. Now, if you get the chance and you really are determined and have the right amount of equipment, I'm sure you could go explore some of these unexplored areas, but you can't just go, wandering around like it's the middle of a summer day, generally speaking, because it's going to be that much harder being the conditions that exist in Antarctica. But travel there very much actually is available.
So the Antarctica Treaty was signed in 1959 by 12 nations operating there at the time, and now it is co-signed by 53 nations. So if you want to have a say in how Antarctica is managed, you have to have a base there or in these islands, which are just offshore. That would be close enough, because the Antarctica Treaty covers everything below 60 degrees latitude south. And that is basically the ring all the way around Antarctica. So all of this is all preserved. And what's really remarkable about that is the entire continent is like a world biosphere. It's a natural reserve owned by no one, although, as I said, some make claims, but they're not allowed to drill, they're not allowed to test nuclear bombs, they're not even allowed to do military practices down here. Anything below that 60 latitude south.
So according to the Antarctic Treaty, they can do no military operations of any kind in Antarctica. They can't drill in Antarctica. They can only do things for scientific purpose and nothing more. At least according to the treaty, according to what they're allowed to do. Now, can other stuff go on down there? Are you breathing?
Which is really amazing that it has stood up to the test of time for so long, because now they are finding minerals and oil, and there are a lot of people that are pining to get down there and start exploiting the resources, much as the whales and seals were hunted to what they called commercial extinction, meaning there was no more reason to go down there in the 50s and 60s because there just weren't any animals to harvest. And that was part of the reason why the Antarctic Treaty was ratified, was to preserve these species. Now,
which, of course, hunting any species to that degree is just absolutely ridiculous, and anybody who should do such a thing should be punished heavily. That is my opinion. But that is a good thing that this treaty was put into place in such a way that it would help preserve the animals that live on the continent.
The seal population has bounced back to where it was in the 1820s when sealing and whaling began, but the whale population is still down. However, they are coming back.
So definitely good news there that the treaty has helped to bring back some of these natural animals of the area. That's always a good thing to hear.
It's really interesting. In Antarctica, there are 4 South Poles. Of course, we have the geographic, which is where the Amundsen-Scott base is, and how the planet rotates around that pole in the south. That's the geographic South Pole right there. And then you have the South Geomagnetic Pole, which is right here. And this is where the Vostok station is, and underneath is Lake Vostok, and we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the largest lakes on the planet, but it's over 2 miles below the ice. And so the South Geomagnetic Pole, it moves just like the magnetic pole. The magnetic pole, where all compasses point south, is actually racing off of the continent, and it is now in the ocean. Just in the same way that the North Magnetic Pole had been fairly stable around northern Hudson Bay and is now racing across the Arctic Ocean towards Siberia.
And within the last year or so, I do remember seeing a report that said that pole movement is actually speeding up. So we've got not only the North Pole moving, but we've also got the South Pole on the move.
And this is somewhat alarming because it could suggest that the planet could be being set up for another pole shift. And if that were the case, well, this coronavirus would look like child's play compared to what would happen if we went through another pole shift. We would pretty much be thrust right back into the Stone Age with continents moving. You would have crustal displacement setting off volcanoes, which would have continents rising and falling into the ocean, massive tidal waves, so every coastal community in the world would be affected, if not completely destroyed. And here I am right now in Santa Cruz, California, only a mile away from the beach. Oh, I'd be dead in an instant. So this is somewhat alarming, and this is some really good, solid science to follow, that the magnetic South Pole is on the move, as is the North Magnetic Pole.
With everything he just described as far as the side effects of the poles moving, then one would have to imagine that possibly Antarctica at one time may have been a tropical location that after a pole shift got shoved into the lower areas and had ice grow on it. Or perhaps the poles were what we would call the equator today, and perhaps that was the frozen area, and the other area at one time was tropical. This is all speculation, of course, but it's speculation based on hard science. It's a possibility. I'm not saying that's the case, but I am saying it's a good possibility that the land that is now Antarctica could have once been in a tropical zone, which means there's no telling what could be found upon it, including, as we looked at last night, the possibility of older lost civilizations going back who knows how many hundreds of millions of years.
And then the final pole, which is really interesting, and this one is not up in the north, but it is this pole of relative inaccessibility. And there it is there on the map. And this is the pole that is the farthest away from any coastline or any civilization or any people. It's been very rarely visited because it is so remote that it remains the least visited point on the land masses in the world to be explored.
So there you go, adventurers. If you really want an adventure on the ice, go to the pole of relative inaccessibility, the furthest point away from any other landmass or human on the planet.
Antarctica is volcanically active. It is the most active continent in the world with volcanoes, over 91 known volcanoes. And now this is going to come into play when we talk about what might be under the ice, because when you have volcanism and you have steaming sand and furoles and steam vents and active volcanoes, both above and below the ice and the surface of water, you also have the propensity of creating large domes under the ice because of this heat which is taking place.
Which in turn creates very large, open, cavernous areas in which many, many things can be found. And we'll get into that more here in just a little while.
So some of the more of the interesting science that's going on there are the meteorites, which hit down on Earth every year. And while most of them are lost in the oceans and will never be found, or on the continents, say if they were to hit the rainforest area, you'd never find any of these meteorites. But in Antarctica, you find them because it's just one giant plateau of white ice, so any rock can be seen. And then what happens is all the ice moves towards the coast, and these are all the sites where they're collecting the meteorites.
And magnetically speaking, I could definitely see why the poles would be a more likely place for meteorites to hit, because it would draw them more so with the amount of iron and metals that are in the meteorites. They would be a little more drawn, I would think, to the more magnetic areas of the planet, like the poles.
And it's a fairly new science. It's only been since the early 1970s that researchers have been coming down here every season to collect the latest year's meteorites. This is what it looks like when they find one. And they treat these meteorites as they would a hazmat operation, with gloves, with tongs, never to touch anything, to put it in hermetically sealed bags. And then they all go back to the Johnson Space Center and are studied there. But then after they're cataloged and studied by NASA, other researchers can request them. So these meteorites do go out to universities if other institutions want to take a look at them.
At least the ones that they are willing to release. Remember, we're still talking about NASA, which I think we can all agree nobody actually trusts.
Well, this is the most famous of all the meteorites that was found on the polar plateau of East Antarctica. And this was the one that is called ALH 84001.
Man, what a catchy name, huh?
And it was containing very small microscopic signs of life from the planet Mars. So Mars had been hit by a big impact, and it knocked loose all these particles into the atmosphere that got into outer space. Some of them became meteorites, some of them came to Earth, some of them landed in Antarctica and were discovered. And when they were discovered, containing this microbial life, it was quite a sensation. You may have remembered that in the news media. I was trying to find the date that was discovered. I think it was in the late 1980s. I remember it as a kid. It was like, oh, proof that there's life in outer space. Not that many of us have many doubts to that anymore. But this also corresponds with the whole concept panspermia.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The meteorite in which they found the microbes from Mars actually was found in Antarctica. And I'm assuming they matched up the chemical composition to match Mars. I'm not sure 100% how or why they know it came from Mars. I just know that's the report. And that's really interesting that was found down there because, I mean, think about it. If that's what they're finding so far, there's no telling what could have happened many times over. Like the octopus, for instance, perhaps it came here on a meteorite, right?
But this also corresponds with the whole concept panspermia, that there are meteorites, not just from Mars, but from all throughout the universe that are traveling across space and will occasionally reach a planet that could support life. And this is how life begins. Even on Earth, in the Precambrian period, that maybe some of these meteorites containing trace biological life forms came here from outer space. So it's quite fascinating that we have one here from Mars that shows some life that exists on one of our planets. And this was, well, a big deal back then. I think now pretty much taken for granted that life is quite abundant, not only in our solar system, but throughout the whole universe.
And I know not everybody out there listening would agree with this, and that is your right to disagree, and you're more than welcome to do such. However, I personally agree with Mr. Martell that there's more likely than not life abundant throughout both the solar system and the universe. But that is only my opinion. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like the clock has got us for this half. We will go ahead and take a network network break right here, and we'll be back with the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show and more about Antarctica right after these messages. Don't you touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
I don't know about stoking the fires, but I know about the men in black. Hi, everyone. It's AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. Are you enjoying tonight's installation of the DarkWolf's Den Show, a focus on Antarctica? I know I am. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. Jerry will return again next Wednesday to kick off the weekend right with another fascinating episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show. I'll return again tomorrow night with the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show with a focus on treasure hunting. One man's junk is another man's treasure. Find out tomorrow night, February 26th. Starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, just how you can identify the treasures within the junk. It should be an interesting rabbit hole to explore. Then Saturday, February 27th, the human instrument. Explore the instrument that is our human body. We're going to talk about ways to tone it, ways to hone it, and I'm going to introduce you to people that have done just that in some remarkable ways, including an on-air experiment Saturday night, perhaps a radio first, as we try to turn our body into a musical instrument. That ought to be a lot of fun. Then we'll end out the weekend right together Sunday, February 28th, with a dive down the rabbit hole of jealousy. Oh boy, get ready, buckle the seatbelts, because we're going deep down this rabbit hole. Jealousy. Join me and find out February 28th, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. All shows start at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. If you haven't done so already, please hop on over to the rippinrabbithole.com. That's RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. There you can sign up for your exclusive backstage pass. That's going to give you access to the 24/7 VIP chat lounge, where the conversation continues down the rabbit hole in our exclusive social media network, which you can sign up for free. It always will be. And then we send out that weekend schedule every Wednesday morning. Unfortunately, we had to send it out on Thursday morning this week, but hopefully everyone that's on that list got their schedule and knows the weekend ahead. Now, a highlight from that schedule shares with you a glimpse into next weekend, which is going to kick off with Champion Sports Nation, as Tuesday Night Videos returns the first Tuesday of every month. I'm excited. Sign up for that backstage pass. Make sure to join CSN for Tuesday Night Videos in the Backstage Lounge, only from rippinrabbithole.com.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Oz.
Hey everybody, it's AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to DarkWolf's Den.
The DarkWolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And welcome back to the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, February 25th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing Antarctica, an amazing topic indeed. Before we go any further, though, speaking of amazing, make sure you check out the amazing RippinRabbitHole.com. That is RippinRabbitHole.com. Go on over there, sign up for your backstage pass, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you get that in hand and enjoy all the amazing features of the RippinRabbitHole.com, including the Down the Rabbit Hole, our exclusive social media alternative. So if you like speech and like to share your thoughts and opinions without the big boys telling you what is and is not accurate, come on over to the RippinRabbitHole.com, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of accurate, there's been a lot of accurate information that has come out over the years about Antarctica, one of the least known continents in all of the world. And there's been a lot of scientific study come out lately, or in the last few years actually, about Antarctica. And one of the craziest things is that it has lakes, huge lakes that are in the top 10 amongst all the world. That's right, some of the biggest lakes in the world are in Antarctica, including one named Lake Vostok. And there's been an interesting find in Lake Vostok.
And Lake Vostok's actually in the top 10 largest lakes in the world. It's about the size of Lake Ontario, one of our Great Lakes here in North America. And there it is, trapped 2.2 miles under the ice. Well, they finally got a drill bit to go down there in 2012, but it was contaminated because they used the kerosene to keep the drills from freezing. They got another drill down there in 2016 that was uncontaminated, went all the way down to lake level, and they were able to pull up some samples. Be very interested to hear what came of this year's discoveries, because every year they're going back and pulling up new samples. But they had found some bacteria in 2016 that was as yet unknown origin or species. So there is unique life that lives in Lake Vostok, and it was presumed that this bacteria came off of fish that lives in this lake that is also unyet discovered or known by science. So unique life forms that live under the ice.
And you remember in the opening monologue, I actually went over one of those cases in the last couple days where they found life in Antarctica once again, where they never expected to find life. And it just goes to show the persistence of life can be, even the most extreme conditions can harbor a large amount. And it talks about two things there, a bacteria and a fish, both of which are unknown to science at this time. And you hear about all kind of cryptids, heck, perhaps Nessie, or what we would consider monsters or creatures of cryptic origin could live in the Antarctic, right? There's so many things yet left undiscovered down there that there's no telling what could be down there. There could be full bases of aliens, right? Where would we be able to find them? Nobody really goes and explores, and it's hard to explore under the ice. So if there are animals down there that we don't understand, Lord knows there could be creatures of intelligence down there that we don't even know exist. It's speculation, yes, but based on ideas that we already know are pertinently true.
Quite interesting. Also at Lake Vostok is this geomagnetic south pole. This is where the southern lights of the polar region, which are called Aurora Australis. Up north here, we have Aurora Borealis for the northern hemisphere. Down there, Aurora Australis. And you'll see this reference to Australia or Australis come up quite frequently in Antarctica. And it took me a while until I figured out why. And I'll show you when we get to the end of this presentation with some of the older maps, which presumed that Australia or a southern continent existed. And this theory goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, who were postulating the Earth as a globe and understanding that there has to be a certain kind of balance with the continents above the water. And so even though Antarctica was only discovered in 1821 by sealers and whalers, it was presumed to have existed for over 2,000 years before that. And the name for it was Australis, a Latin term. And when Captain Cook discovered Australia in the late 1700s, that continent of Australia got the name. Antarctica gets its name also from the ancient Greeks. Over the North Pole is the constellation called Arctic.
I think he actually means Arcturus, if I'm not mistaken.
And Antarctic is just the opposite of Arctos. That's actually the real name. And so when it was finally discovered, it was the opposite of the Arctic.
Which makes sense, the Antarctic being anti-Arctic or opposite of the Arctic. That makes sense to me. But then again, this is the same person, myself, that remembers there being a landmass and ice at the North Pole. I don't know about you guys, but I remember most of my life growing up that there was this ice mass at the North Pole. Well, according to history and reality, that has never actually existed. Figure that one out.
Well, this is the part of the presentation that I'll show you what is speculated to be down here. But this is the presumed hole in the ice. This is South Pole. This is where the hole is. I can't tell you if these are real or Photoshop, but apparently there's a massive hole there. And I will tell you one thing we found out is absolutely 100% positive. There is a huge no-fly zone over this hole in the ice. And what makes that so interesting, and I was on with George Norrie about a year ago on Beyond Belief, and I was telling him about this, and George was like, why do they need a no-fly zone there? Nobody goes there. You don't have anything that they would need you not to fly over unless they were hiding some massive hole under the ice. And then this corresponds with what might be up in the Arctic, which is also, if we think of the Earth as a torus, energy in, energy out, hole in, hole out, north, south, and Brooks Agnew, myself, and others are going to mount an expedition to find the hole in the northern hemisphere, which I think is also on land. And Brooks Agnew has the GPS coordinates to it. Would make sense. If there's one down here, there would be one up there. Maybe this is the entrance into the inner world, as Admiral Byrd and others have speculated. They've seen it so big that you could fly an airplane into it with enough room to turn around and fly back out, as Admiral Byrd said he did.
Could there possibly be entrances into the hollow earth at both the north and south poles? Of course, the reason or excuse they give for that no-fly zone, by the way, is the fact that the electronics in the polar region supposedly messes up because of the heavy magnetics, but I don't know how true that is. I do know there are certain no-fly zones in weird spots, so perhaps it is an entrance into the underground world, Agartha, or the hidden hollow earth, which is another topic we're going to have to cover sometime soon.
Well, you keep looking around Antarctica, and there's this guy called Florida Marquis. He does many of these videos, which I've watched many hours of his videos. Some of them, I just think they're shadows or crevices, but others, you get like these perfectly round, what could be crafts under the ice. So according to Emery Smith and Corey Good, there are like 3 known large crafts, and they get the nickname of Columbus's 3 ships, Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria.
What an interesting naming set, huh? And I know a lot of people don't trust Corey Good and Emery Smith and that information. So once again, just take with a grain of salt what you may and take the information as is presented. And it's in the end up to you to decide whether or not you believe it, right?
I would say certainly this is the best candidate that I would say for a real authentic craft under the ice, very large. These could be, and there are other features like this one, but I've come to see that this one is probably not real because I showed these photos to an expedition company that'll take you on a custom trip. It's actually a misnomer that you cannot go down there and go to a location if you want to go to it.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, start your planning. It's time to go to Antarctica. That's right.
But they told me that, well, this couldn't be Antarctica because there's not a single one of these helicopters on the continent. Maybe it's up in the Arctic area where the other hole in the ice is. Maybe there's a craft up there. But the only place I've ever seen these pictures is in this video called the Orion Conspiracy that came out around 2012. And there are some, after I rewatched it when I came back from Antarctica, some factually incorrect statements that are made. And these are the only places you'll see these images. So my thinking now is I'm more skeptical than I was going down. I think these are probably fake. It can't be determined because we don't have any corroborating photos or videos of that craft under the ice. Same thing goes with the pyramids, and I've been able to locate 3 areas that supposedly have pyramids. This is what they look like. This one's just below New Zealand. This is the same as this. And this is another one which kind of looks more like a mountain, I'd say. But this one in the Shackleton Range, not too far from Mount Epperly, is probably the best candidate. So I talked to the expedition company about this one, and they say, oh yeah, we recognize that. We fly over it all the time as we're on our way to Vinson Massif, the tallest mountain in Antarctica, where a lot of people want to do the mountain climb of all the tallest peaks on all 7 continents. And I said, well, has anybody ever gone down there and climbed this one? No. You guys ever stop there or maybe take samples, see if there's anything that looks like it might be fashion? It's awfully symmetrical as a pyramid is. And they said, no, we haven't. And they call it a nunatak, which is just an attractive mountain that sticks out under the ice. So.
And there is your new English word for tonight, ladies and gentlemen, nunatak. That's right, a mountainous regional top that sticks out above the ice. But this one here looks very, very pyramidal, to the point that even I would be like him, hey, what, you ain't looked at this yet? You ain't discovered anything here? So yeah, if anybody wants to get the GPS coordinates and take a trip down there, you might be the first one to make a discovery. There you go.
That's what it might be. But the Shackleton Range is directly south of the German Neumayer base, offshore from the Fichtner ice shelf. And that's the GPS coordinates. If you want to take a look at it, you zoom in on it with Google Earth, and it's amazing. It looks just like you're checking out a large pyramid with a sub-small pyramid right next to it.
And you remember one of the opening stories in the monologue, the story about the life found under the ice was found under the Fichtner shelf. So there you go.
This is another one I've been able to debunk. This is an airstrip that is used by this expedition company on the Union Glacier. And so this was an area not too far away from this airstrip where they stop for the day, get people acclimated, break up the trip. And then, I don't know if you remember, like in 2013, 2014, there was this Fitbit data dump. And the only story that was picked up by the news was that the soldiers in Afghanistan and Kandahar were exposed because now the Fitbit data is being picked up by the terrorists and they know how to shoot at our guys. Well, there were a bunch of them that came out of Antarctica, including right here by the Union Glacier, which was this presumed UFO base. And this was the shape that those Strava heat signatures were doing, around and around and around, a whole bunch of people doing this route. And so I heard that it was the Union Glacier, and I knew that this company stopped there. I said, well, hey, a couple miles away, there's this area where all these Fitbit heat signatures come from. What could that be? And sometimes, Neil, the simplest explanation is often the truth. And in this case, he said, oh, yeah, well, we a couple years ago in that 2014 time span, we did a little triathlon, and we had people run around a course right here. There you go. There's the answer to that riddle.
So if that be the case and they just ran a little triathlon down there, that would explain the Fitbit issue. And again, take that one with a grain of salt, because I think there may be a little bit more to it, but that's just my opinion. However, even with that debunked, there was something else really strange that happened a couple years ago you guys might remember.
What's also somewhat of an enigma are all these notable elite that were going down there, also in this time frame, 2015, 2016. Here's John Kerry on Election Day. Yeah, the same election that Hillary Clinton lost. You'd think he'd be up in North America helping his party win, but no, he's down in Antarctica. This is getting off the plane at McMurdo. They rested up for a day or two, and then they get back on the plane. They disappeared for a couple days. Nobody knows where they went, and came back to McMurdo and then flew back. Buzz Aldrin was also down there. He had a health scare and had to be medevaced out of there. And what was really interesting in the conspiracy world is that Buzz Aldrin, he wrote a tweet, quote, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." Some people say it was a spoof Twitter site. Other people think that they showed Buzz Aldrin something that scared him.
And I remember when that tweet came out, and it seemed legit to me. And he did come back all of a sudden very quickly with a health scare. So there may have been something going on down there that they showed him that he didn't quite like.
Here's the Patriarch Kirill. This is like the Pope of the Eastern Christian Orthodox Church. He came down there. Here's King Carlos of Spain. And then you have Prince Harry doing a cross-country trip to the South Pole, back up there where it is presumed that there is this massive hole under the ice. Well, I showed you these pictures. Maybe the elite are going down there to see what Corey Good and David Wilcock call the Illuminati Disneyland, that they want to see this craft or some other antediluvian civilization under the ice.
That is strange that many celebrities in such a short amount of time decided to go check out whatever was found in Antarctica. But what do you guys think? Perhaps it is an ancient civilization under the ice. Or perhaps it's UFOs that have crashed down there and tried to survive as long as they could in the icy world. Or perhaps there's just findings that are natural to the Earth that we are yet to even begin to understand. In the end, all you can do is look at the evidence, look at it with a keen eye, listen to all of the proof presented, and apply a little common sense. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, February 25th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing for the last time this weekend, but don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun. That's right. Make sure you come back tomorrow, Friday, February 26th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, for our buddy and network partner, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, as he takes over the airwaves with a Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show. That's right. On tomorrow, Friday, February 26th, he's going to be talking about treasure hunting. I've done a small amount of treasure hunting, haven't ever found anything, but I have looked into the massive amount of hidden treasures around the world. It's definitely an episode that you're going to love to listen to, and one you do not want to miss. Then on Saturday, February 27th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, he's going to be talking about the human instrument. How many different ways can we make music with just our bodies? I'm sure, I know I seen in chat last night, beans, right? I'm sure a couple of us can think of a couple different ways to make some hearty music with our bodies. You remember burping the national anthem, right? I still know guys that can do that, or playing it on your armpit, or playing like Mary Had a Little Lamb. I don't know. There's many different ways to do it, and there's even a special on-air experiment where you may learn one more way. So do check that out Saturday, February 27th. 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then on Sunday, February 28th, 2021, also 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. All shows here on the network are 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. On Sunday, he'll be rounding out the weekend right with his emotional journey, I guess you would call it, into the next emotion of jealousy. Last week was anger. This week is jealousy. That's right. Jealousy is an emotion that it can be just as harmful as it can be helpful, and I'm sure he'll go over many ways on how to deal with this interesting emotion. All that and more coming up Sunday, February 28th. 2021. And that's going to round out the weekend here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio and the RippinRabbitHole.com. Speaking of the RippinRabbitHole.com, that is RippinRabbitHole.com. That's right, over there you're going to find a load of fun. Anytime we're not on the air, make sure you go over there and make sure first off you sign up for that backstage pass. That's right, this is going to unlock all the magic of the site, like the ability to drop down the rabbit hole. That's right, that is our 24/7 social media alternative. Speaking of 24/7, also make sure you catch me and the rest of the rabbits over there in the 24/7 backstage lounge. That's right. Come on over and hang out with us and enjoy a plethora of conversation where I will be right after the show. You've also got access to the radio player over there, as well as the Listen Live section, where you'll find out all of the topics every week for the entire week, just in case we have issues with our email like we did this week. So we do apologize you did not receive that email this week. We had a little issue with our servers, but we will try to get that resolved and out by next week. But if you still are curious, you can always jump over to the Listen Live section of the RippinRabbitHole.com. That's it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a blast to kick these weekends off right, and an absolute honor and pleasure to do this for you guys every single week. So on behalf of Walt House, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, our wonderful admin team, and with a huge shout out to Ripon, Wisconsin, and everybody across the world listening to us right now, or even on the replay. We're absolutely honored to have you guys along for the ride. On behalf of all these folks, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next time, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. How? Yeah. That's right.
Lost and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever home. Is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark